Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our class on the chosen people. Just before we begin and get into a discussion on the chosen people and how it influenced the United States of America, a few important announcements of upcoming events. We know we're all getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. We're getting very, very close. So this Monday evening at 7 o'clock, we're going to be showing over on YouTube. It's going to be the high holidays, the stories and songs of the holidays. And we have a beautiful singer, Ellie Marcus, is going to be singing some of the beautiful melodies of the holidays and telling us about the meaning of these songs, the meaning of these melodies. So I'd like to invite you to join with us. It's at 7 p.m. this Monday. That's Pacific time for those of you joining us from all over the country and all over the world. And you just have to go to their website, chabadconejo.com/song, S-O-N-G. You see it on the screen in front of you. So just join us this Monday, 7 p.m. Take a moment, jot it down. Monday, put it in your calendars, 7 p.m. Pacific time with singer Ellie Marcus, the songs and stories of the high holidays. Then this coming Thursday, not tomorrow, but a week from Thursday, also at 7 p.m., my Rosh Hashanah sermon will be delivered over Zoom, Facebook Live, and then later rebroadcast on YouTube. So you have a chance to listen into the High Holiday sermon. The topic of the Rosh Hashanah sermon, clarity in times of uncertainty. So that's this Thursday, 7 p.m. It'll be on Zoom. You just have to go to jewishacademy.com and all the links will be over there. So instead of giving you the Zoom link now, the easiest thing is for me to tell you to go on jewishacademy.com and you look for the links are there. That's a week from tomorrow evening, Thursday, September 17th at 7 p.m., the Rosh Hashanah sermon, Clarity in Times of Certainty, and times of uncertainty, that is. And please tell your friends to join as well. They're all welcome to join with us. The following Thursday will be on Yom Kippur. The Yom Kippur sermon will be Thursday, September 24th, and the title of that sermon is Privileged and Proud, Celebrating the Bond of Love. So I look forward to joining you for both of those sermons. If you have any high holiday information that you need, please go to our website, chabadconejo.com/HH, stands for High Holidays 2020 is the year. We look forward to having you. Onwards to our class. So we've been talking how Moses begs God for forgiveness of the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf, and God goes ahead and forgives. But God informs Moses that he will be sending an angel to lead the Jewish people from this point forward, and that God himself will not be doing the leading of the people in the wilderness. Moses will make the attempt to ask God to change that decree, and that God himself should be with the Jewish people, not just send an angel. And the avenue that Moses will use is that it's important for the world to see the distinction between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. And they will know of that distinction if indeed God shows himself to dwell amongst the Jewish people. That distinction will be critical for the success of the mission of the chosen people. Moses understood that this mission of being a light unto the nation, of influencing the world, of being a blessing to all the families on the face of the earth, was not going to be an easy mission. It's going to be a difficult task. And perhaps it's easy when they're in the wilderness and all these miracles are happening, but once they enter into a land, and once they become a political entity as well, and once they have government, and once they have businesses, it's going to be difficult to keep focus on being a chosen people. And therefore, it's going to be critical for the Jewish people and for the world to know and the people to know indeed that God dwells amongst our people and gives us that which we need, the spiritual energy that we need, the protection we need, the blessings that we need to go on and influence the world. Last week, I shared a story about President Truman with you, that President Truman understood this and understood the role of the Jewish people, which is why he was so strongly in favor of recognizing Israel in the United Nations in 1948. Today, I'd like to back up a little bit and let's go before the days of President Truman. And I want to take a look and we'll just scroll through some of the presidents of the United States and some of the comments that they made during their presidency as it relates to the Jewish people in general, and as it relates specifically to the role of being a chosen people. And then we'll take another look at the United States of America in its formation as to how much of it was taken from the Bible, from Torah, from the Jewish people. So John Adams, the second president of the United States, and I quote, "The Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. If I were an atheist and believed blind eternal fate, I should still believe that fate had ordained the Jews to be the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. I'm a religious person," the president says. So of course, for me, I believe that the Jewish people have this mission to civilize the human race. But even if I were an atheist and that everything was just fate, I would have to believe that fate chose the Jewish people to be the most essential instrument to civilize the nations on earth. Another quote from President Adams: "They are the most glorious nation that ever inhabited the earth. The Romans were but a bauble in comparison to the Jews. They have given religion to 3/4 of the globe and have influenced the affairs of mankind more and more happily than any other nation." In a letter that he wrote to Mordechai Manuel Noah, and it's a larger letter than the paragraph I'm going to read to you, but he had this close relationship with Mordechai Noah, and he penned a letter to him, and in this letter, he has this paragraph. He writes that he was fantasizing, he was dreaming, and in this dream, he says, "I could find it in my heart to wish that you had been at the head of 100,000 Israelites. So I fantasize, I dream that you, Mordechai, would have 100,000 Israelites with you, and you would march with them into Judea, making a conquest of that country and restoring your nation to the dominion of it. For I really wish the Jews again in Judea an independent nation." He's writing this in the early 1800s, and he's saying, if I had my way, you would have 100,000 soldiers with you, you would march into Judea, and you would make it the Jewish homeland. President Woodrow Wilson, in reaction to the Balfour Declaration, stated, "The allied nation with the fullest concurrence of our government and people are agreed that in Palestine shall be laid the foundation of a Jewish commonwealth." President Wilson again, recalling the previous experience of the colonists in applying the Mosaic Code to the order of their internal life, it is not to be wondered at that the various passages in the Bible that serve to undermine royal authority, stripping the crown of its cloak of divinity, held up before the pioneer Americans the Hebrew Commonwealth as a model government. So he's writing that we learn from the Bible to strip the royalty of its authority, of its divine authority. Kings would always say they were the divine, and therefore they had divine authority. The Hebrew Bible stripped the monarchy of its cloak of divinity. And we held up this model government for the world to see. I continue his letter. In the spirit and essence of our Constitution, the influence of the Hebrew Commonwealth was paramount, in that it was not only the highest authority for the principle that rebellion to tyrants is obedient to God, but also because it was in itself a divine precedent for a pure democracy, as distinguished from monarchy or any other form of government. President Wilson understood that it was the Torah that modeled the government that the United States ultimately formed. President Harding writes, "It is impossible for one who has studied at all the services of the Hebrew people to avoid the faith that they will one day be restored to their historical national home, and they enter on a new and yet greater phase of their contribution to the advance of humanity. Think of the power of these words. What President Harding was saying, it's impossible to study the Bible and to study the books of the prophets and to be a believer, to be a person of faith, and to not have the faith that they're coming back. That's what he says. There is no question in my mind that the Jewish people will return to their homeland because there is more for them to do to advance their contribution to humanity. The world needs them, and therefore they will be back in their homeland. President Calvin Coolidge, the Jews themselves, of whom a considerable number were already scattered throughout the colonies, were true to the teachings of their prophets. The Jewish faith is predominantly the faith of liberty. And then coming back once again where we started with President Harry Truman. I had faith in Israel before it was established, and I have faith in it now. This is what he said 11 minutes after Israel's proclamation of independence. President Lyndon Johnson, our society is illuminated by the spiritual insights of the Hebrew prophets. America and Israel have a common love of human freedom, and they have a common faith in a democratic way of life. Most, if not all of you, have very deep ties with the land and with the people of Israel, as I do. For my Christian faith sprang from yours. The Bible stories are woven into my childhood memories as the gallant struggle of modern Jews to be free of persecution is also woven into our souls. And when Soviet Premier Kosygin asked President Johnson why the United States supports Israel when there are 80 million Arabs and only 3 million Israelites, the president replied, because it is right. That simple. I support them because it is right. Now, backing up, during the colonial and constitution-making period, the Americans, especially the Puritans, adopted and adapted various Hebraic laws for their own governance. So before 1776, as they're beginning to spread out, as they're beginning to form governments, the legislation, as an example of New Haven, was based on the premise that the judicial laws of God as they were delivered by Moses and as they are not ceremonial shall generally bind all offenders. You understand what that means? Remove from the Bible the ceremonial Judaic laws, the traditions of the Jewish people, but keep the rest of the Bible that deals with civil laws as the law of our land. So New Haven went ahead when they formed their government and said, what are the laws of our society? The laws of the Bible. No, you don't have to put on tefillin every day. You don't need a mezuzah on your door. Those are ceremonial laws for the Jewish people. But all the laws that govern in the Torah between man and man must be kept as part of the law of our society. Did you know that? That original laws in our cities and our states were based on Torah law. 38 of the 79 statutes in the New Haven Code of 1665 derived their authority directly and quoted from the Torah, from the Hebrew Bible. The laws of Massachusetts were based on the very same foundation. It wasn't that they studied it and then they wrote up in their own words. They quoted from the Torah. They quoted from your Torah. They put the verse, the book number, most of it from the book of Deuteronomy that we're studying. The 15 capital laws of New England included, listen to this, the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Noahide laws as passed on by the book of Genesis. The 7 universal laws of morality were part of the 15 capital laws of New England. America, the United States of America, may rightly be deemed the first and only nation that was explicitly founded on the Noahide laws of the Torah. The institutions prescribed by the American Constitution, the institutions such as the House of Representatives, the United States Senate, the Supreme Court of the United States, and the executive branch of the presidency all come from the Torah. Their influence of how to make a different government than all other governments on the face of the earth were founded on Torah principles. They studied the Torah. They studied the book of Deuteronomy. And they formed a government in which the Torah goes ahead and says that there should be different types of leadership. There should be leadership that represents each community, which is a House of Representatives. There are leadership that represents each tribe, which was the Senate representing each state as we have it. There is the Sanhedrin, which is the Supreme Court. There was the Nasi, which is the presidency as well. It's interesting that in our system, we don't have shared government within the executive branch as other countries do. If you look in Israel, it's coalition government. So the Knesset members themselves are belonging to different political parties, and quite often they clash within the own cabinet itself, and that's how governments continue to collapse throughout the world. In our country, we may love the system, hate the system, but the fact is that the president that wins the election brings in his or her own cabinet. It becomes that particular party, and that's the party that serves out their term. This is all biblical if you study original writings of how this was formed. Where did they get these ideas from? They don't hide it. It wasn't as if we're going to just make believe we invented it ourselves. The founding fathers said we came up with these great concepts. The founding fathers gave the credit to the Hebrew Bible. The original American Constitution was so rooted in Torah Judaism. There's a Roman philosopher, his name is Dio Cassius. He wrote, "The Jews are distinguished from the rest of mankind in practically every detail of life." He didn't write that in favor of us. That was to express his disapproval. In particular, he writes, they do not honor any of the usual gods, but they show extreme reverence to only one God. He didn't like this idea. We're so used to societies that have many gods. We can choose and pick. Every day we have a different God. These guys, they're fanatical. They only have one, and they have such reverence for this one God. Part of that extreme reverence translated into following that one God's law, a law which could not be altered as was convenient. That was the revolution of Judaism to the world, that had religions and had gods and had different faiths, but you picked what was convenient, what you liked better. Here we come along and we say it's an absolute. It's a God-given standard. And by that fact alone, it stood apart from any law of any other society. But there was more about the Jews that was strange, besides their God and their law. The Torah was like no other holy book of any people before or since, in yet another way. And I've often pointed this out when we study some of these stories of the Bible together. And the Torah will tell us some really negative stories about our ancestors. It's not easy to read verses and to know our Zadis and Bubbies were amongst that group, right? Why'd you take us out of Egypt? We miss Egypt. We miss the cucumbers. We miss the pickles that we used to have there. Why'd you take us to this wilderness? Why are you giving us this manna, complaint after complaint? This is the God that took us out of Egypt, pointing to a golden calf. To know that our Bubbies and Zadis going back thousands of years ago were from amongst that crowd. It's not pleasant to read. You know, you get to another chapter and then you read another story about complaints against Moses and you cringe. These are our people. This is our nation. These are our ancestors. You see, holy books of a particular people always made that people look good. It doesn't point out the faults of those people if they're trying to build them up. So here's the Torah telling us you're a chosen people, right? You're a light unto the nations. We get criticized by the world because it sounds so arrogant. Read the Torah. The Torah tells us so much about our ancestors that's not so pleasant. And we have this Torah in every hotel room throughout the world, talking about our ancestors' sins. We look bad in a lot of the Torah. We complain a lot. We sin a lot against God, against the law. And yet we insisted that we carry this Torah with us wherever we go. And we shaped history and the destiny of the world with this Torah, because it was a Torah of truth. It was a Torah of honesty. It wasn't going to wash away any of our faults. No, we were going to publish it. We were going to put it in writing. We were going to study it together. For those of us that have been studying Wednesday afternoons for who knows how many decades, we're going to study it again and again. We're going to repeat it because we're going to learn from it. We're going to learn from the mistakes of our bubbies and our zaydis, and we're going to grow from these mistakes. And in that sense, we heal their errors. We heal them. And they who were there at that original time look down from heaven and they see us studying it. They're not embarrassed by it. They're saying, learn, my tatala, learn, my grandchild, learn from our mistakes and become better, become more committed to the mission because of it. So we have been discussing this idea of the chosen people now for some time. God distinguished each of you from the billions of humans on the face of the earth. That's simple. He asks you to personally be his ambassador to help bring the world to its perfection. We have a task. We have a mission. We teach, we inspire, we serve as role models, but most importantly, we follow the teachings of God, demonstrating that there's a power greater than man's, an authority that's wiser than our own. And thereby we bring down light to this world and we spread this light to every corner of the world. You are his army. You are his foot soldiers. You help bring God's vision to humanity. So don't underestimate your importance. Don't underestimate your role. Going back to what we started with, Moses pleads with God that he change his mind once again and that he decides to dwell amongst the people. And God says, okay to that as well. He says, okay to Moshe. He will once again lead the people so that there will be a recognizable distinction between the Jewish people and the rest of the world. By having this unfold with Moshe putting forth the arguments and God being convinced by Moshe, what the Torah established for us as the reasoning for God's decision. Think about this. The Torah writes that God makes a decision, and then the Torah writes that Moses, a human being, approaches God and asks God to change his mind, and that God indeed changes his mind. It's odd. Clearly, God knew everything Moses could possibly say. He's God. He's infinite God. Infinite God knows all. And therefore, anything Moses can come up with, that the Jewish people throughout history will need something to show them as being separate from the rest of the world. And therefore, please dwell among them. God didn't know that we were going to need that. Without Moses telling him that, he wouldn't have known it. Clearly, God knew. He knew that there would be a need for distinction of the Jewish people in order for us to have staying power. But God, having it unfold in this manner, and recording it in the Torah in this manner, that God made one decision, that Moses spoke before God and pleaded for a change, and that Moses was successful, God is letting us know that this is the reason. This is the reason. The reason is because you need to know, the world needs to know that I have separated you from the rest of the world. Otherwise, we would have simply accepted this as a matter of fact. Secondly, when you have something taken away from you, there's a greater appreciation for it. God wanted them to understand what kind of privilege it was to have the divine presence rest with them. They were taking it for granted. So God removes it from them. Moses pleads, and then it's returned. Now the appreciation is greater. Now we're far more careful about golden calves. Thirdly, we learn more and more about the quality of Moses, about who this man was. Why is that so critical? So that we know what we need to look for in our leaders of world Jewish history. Because our leaders will play a pivotal role in our journey. Moses becomes the perfect model of what we're looking for in a leader. Not an ego, not looking for power, not looking for wealth. Looking to fulfill the mission of God while at the same time caring and recognizing the importance of each and every single soldier in that mission. Moses felt that this was what we call an Eis Ratzon, a good time, an auspicious time. God was in a, if I use such a vernacular, was in a good mood. You know, there are times, whether it's your parent that you're arguing with, or a teacher that you're arguing with, or a boss at work that you're arguing with, and they give in to your list, right? You know, can I take a few days off? And you get that, or whatever you're asking your parents for. And you pick up that they're in a good mood, and there was something that you always wanted to bring up, but you never had the courage to do so. But you're just feeling it, you know, on a roll right now. We're getting things on the checklist. Let me try one more. Moses does the same. Remember, he got about that. First God said he's going to wipe them out, and he's not wiping them out. Then he asks for forgiveness, he gets that. Then God says he won't dwell with them. Moses gets him that. So he's going to try one more. And he says to God, God, show me your glory. Show me your glory. And of course, the commentaries jump all over this verse. What does that mean? Show me your glory. You know, I want to see you. Well, God doesn't have a physical appearance, and Moses knew that. Moses was 40 days and 40 nights, 3 times up on Mount Sinai. He knows that God doesn't have a physical appearance. So what does he mean by show me your glory? What does it mean, let me see you? Clearly not in the physical, but in the spiritual. No concealments. I want to understand you. I want to understand you completely. You're a mystery still, God. How does your system work? When are you merciful? What are the right words to say to get you into a mood like this? Because we're going to need this secret again. And maybe not in my leadership, but in their periods of time of history. They're going to enter into the land of Israel. They're going to face difficult times. There's going to be periods of exile going on. They're going to need to know how to get you in a good mood. I want to understand the system. When and how do we get you into a merciful mood? When are you angry? When does justice rule, and when does rachamim, mercy, rule? You know, we're heading into the high holiday period. So much of our prayers deal with these themes. You know, the famous song Avinu Malkeinu, which we say over and over. What do those words mean? Avinu, our father, Malkeinu, our king. Think about it. Father and king represent 2 different relationships. Father is more merciful. Malkeinu is more justice, the king. And we are appealing to God as the God of justice, the God of mercy, but clearly we want Rachamana, we want the mercy of God to be more powerful. Moses wants to understand it all. One has to remember that Moses has already seen God more than any other human being ever did or ever will. They first met at the burning bush. They had a direct discussion for 7 days. On the way to Egypt, they spoke some more. In Egypt, they spoke quite often. The entire chapter 12 of the book of Exodus, you get a chance to look at it, is a conversation that God has with Moses about preparing the Jewish nation for the Exodus and giving over the laws of the Passover. An entire chapter discussion with Moses. They spoke at the splitting of the sea. They spoke during the 7 weeks leading up to Mount Sinai, to the revelation at Sinai. And then came the Sinai revelation, which was experienced by all the people, followed by Moses going up to heaven for 40 days and 40 nights. Then there's a return trip for another 40 days and 40 nights to ask for forgiveness. And yet after all of this, what does Moses ask for? Show me your glory. And God himself in the Torah describes his relationship with Moses, as we said last week, as a face-to-face relationship. Nevertheless, this was all the manifestations of God. As God, the infinite, must filter himself a finite man to understand, to hear, to see. Moses wanted something above this level. He wanted something even above the level of the angels. He wanted the real thing, the essence. Who are you really? And once he tastes that essence, even just a little bit, he'll never ask another question. He'll never have another question. Because all will be clear if only I can touch the essence. I find it noteworthy that this state of closeness, this feeling of close proximity to God, they can even have such a discussion, that he can even say, let me see all of you. Just to even ask that means you're feeling real close to God. I want you to think about this. When is this request taking place? When is he asking them this? He didn't ask him this when he was up on top of Mount Sinai getting the Torah. That would have been the time to ask, right? He's right there. It's a spiritual mode. It's all going good. He would ask that. He doesn't ask it. When does he ask it? It comes about through a story of sin. It's the golden calf that brought to this discussion. A sin of great magnitude. True, not a sin of Moses, but nevertheless, from the sin and Moses pleading for forgiveness, we come to a stage where Moses is asking for far more than he had prior to the sin. How is this so? Number one, perhaps it was the fact that Moses saw how God made up his mind and then changed his mind due to Moses' own prayers. Not just once, but a few times. Now, this obviously satisfied Moses, but must have confused him or made him curious. It must have been a mystery to him. How can it be that I, a finite human being, could have influence on an infinite God? Doesn't make any sense. A human judge could at times hear something from an attorney, and it makes him think, and he rules different because of what he heard from a good attorney. But that's a human judge. This is God Almighty. He knows it all. He knows absolute truth. No argument could work with him. If so, what was it that brought about a change from justice to mercy? Meaning both are truth. There's truth in justice, there's truth in mercy. God can choose to sit on the seat of one or the other. And man, in this case Moses, can affect that choice. How? What is the magical words? I want to know, Moses says, what did I do that worked? Because as I said, that's valuable information to pass on to the future. That formula is so critical to future generations. Number two, the state of purity and forgiveness was so strong that it indeed brought about a closer relationship than before. That the sin actually brought them to a higher state of a relationship. And you think about this in our own lives, in marriage, at times when there is a conflict and then the two resolve to overcome their differences, they could find themselves closer than they were before the conflict. The conflict itself brought about something, a longing for each other that made the relationship even stronger than it was before the conflict. Number three, a philosophical question can be asked. Why didn't God prevent the episode of the golden calf from taking place? You ever think about that question? He was God. Why didn't he stop it from ever happening? Now, I know your first answer is because God doesn't interfere in free choice, which is a good answer. God allows man to make choices. They made a choice to make a golden calf. God was not going to get in the way of free choice. That's not my question. I understand that God allows for us to have the choice to make an idol. But when I taught you about the making of the golden calf, I told you how it came about. And I told you it came about from a miscalculation of the counting of the days. Moses says, I'll be back in 40 days. They begin the count when Moses left. The actual clock began when Moses arrives at the top of the mountain. Therefore, they're off by a day. And so when Moses didn't come back when they thought he was coming back, they panicked. And when they panicked, they made the golden calf thinking that Moses died. So why wouldn't have God, as he's studying with Moses, and God is infinite, so he can see as he's studying with Moses what's going on down below, and he sees that they're beginning to panic because their clock is telling them Moses should return. That's an innocent mistake. That's not a free choice to sin. They're making a mistake. They miscalculated. They misunderstood. So why wouldn't God say to Moses, Moses, I think, although you were supposed to stay up here for a few more hours, I think it would be a good idea for you to go back now, because otherwise they're panicking. They're getting all filled with anxiety. It would be a good idea for you to go now. We'll continue talking another time. That's not interfering in free choice. That's seeing the situation on the ground and saying they're making an innocent mistake. Let's fix it. Why not do that? And so you want to say because 15 minutes of studying with God has infinite value and God did not want to stop a lesson that had infinite value. Okay. So why not have a loudspeaker, a microphone from heaven with Moses' voice saying, I understand you guys think I'm coming down today. Really, it's tomorrow. That's it. And you're telling me the creator of the world, who creates an entire world in 6 days, could not figure out how to make a microphone, loudspeakers, video, email, text messages, or WhatsApp? God couldn't send everyone a message. Don't worry about Moses, he's fine. Or have Moses speak on a voice note and send it to everyone down below. Too much to ask for? Okay. Aaron was a prophet. Aaron was below. Why not communicate with Aaron? Tell the people on the first day, not on the 40th day. No, you guys are making a mistake in counting. Moses meant we start the clock at this particular hour, and they never would have been off. Added to all of this, we have a Midrashic story, which is based upon oral tradition as well, that when they use the word zeh, ish Moshe, this man Moses didn't survive, they were pointing with a finger, this man Moses. And the commentaries say that they were pointing at an image of Moses, that the Satan up above in the heavenly world had this image of Moses' funeral taking place in heaven, and there was this picture in the heavenly, in the skies, of Moses' coffin being carried out from heaven. Why did God allow for that? Why not the very opposite, an image of Moses studying at the throne of God? As mentioned, this is all a philosophical question. And our answer, therefore, does not take away the literal tragedy of the episode of the golden calf, but it gives us a possible glance at the silver lining in all of this. The Talmud says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi taught, the Jews only made the golden calf to open the way for repentance. This whole story happened so that we would understand the power of repentance. Moses is going to need to find a way to seek forgiveness for the people and for this repentance to take place, for there to be prayer, for there to be this avenue. We will become part of this for the rest of our existence. Think, Yom Kippur is coming, a day of atonement, a day in which we ask God for forgiveness. How do you know that you can ask God for forgiveness? Maybe once you sin, you're done. How do you know you have the ability to wipe it and become a clean slate? How do you know you can turn to God in prayer? It's from this sin, this story of the golden calf, that will become part of us as a people. And a temple will be built because of this, and prayers will be authored, and a new approach of dealing with sin and forgiveness comes about because of the episode of the golden calf. The Talmud is teaching us that this great error in judgment, this great sin, paved the way for a greater good, for a world of repentance. And for people just 40 days from the revelation could sin with a golden calf, then there is hope for the rest of us. Then there's a way for us to seek forgiveness. I'll stop at this point because it's a wonderful, wonderful segue into appreciating the days that we're in now, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, leading up to Yom Kippur, is to understand what it's all about, that we really do have this relationship with God, and we really do have the ability to make amends and to change our ways and to bring down tremendous, tremendous blessings for ourselves, for our family, for our community, and for our world. As I've been saying over and over in every possible way of communication, we this year have to make this Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur the most meaningful Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur of our lives. Somehow, and it has to come from the depths within our soul, because it's not going to come from being inside the synagogues or the temples with cantors singing away, because it's a different year. Yeah, we're going to have outdoor services, and they're going to be different. They're going to be quicker. They're going to be with masks on. They're going to be socially distant. So you're not going to have what you always had, the ambiance, so to say, of the services to bring out that mood. It has to come from you. It has to come from the depth of your heart and your soul. Let's make it the most meaningful Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We can wish each other now as we get into these days a Ksiva v'chasima tova, a happy year, a sweet year, a healthy year, a meaningful year, a year filled with purpose, and a year indeed in which we succeed in our mission to be a chosen people, God's ambassadors to the world, to bring blessings to all the families on the face of the earth. You're welcome to join me this Friday for my weekly sermon, and I'll be at 3 o'clock this Friday. Monday again at 7 p.m. Monday we have the songs and stories of the high holidays, and next Thursday evening, the Rosh Hashanah sermon. Please do spread the word. Let your friends know that they can all tune in and hear the Rosh Hashanah sermon this year at 7 p.m. next Thursday. Have a great week, everybody.